Welcome into the college football preview show. We got SEC line games out just 38 days away from kickoff. Huge shout out to PointsBet for putting out the spreads, game of the year odds. We got Ralph Michaels, WagerTalk.com, Rob Veno, as well at Rob Veno Sports on Twitter, Sports Memo, WagerTalk. Ralph, welcome in, man. How you feeling?
Guys, it's been a sad couple Tuesdays. I really just got so accustomed to doing this show that it really does. It makes my Tuesday. I love chatting college football with you guys.
Absolutely, man. It's good to be back with you boys as well. And Robbie, happy Tuesday morning to you, man.
Happy Tuesday to you, Drew. Likewise, glad to be back with you guys. We had to take a little hiatus there while we saw where the cards landed here in this ever-changing college football landscape. But, I do the Wager Talk Daily NBA tip-off show at 3 o'clock, but I never get a chance to really raise a pen. So I'm glad to be back with Ralph where I can have a pen, raise it up there, make a point. When I need to ask a question, I can point the pen. All kinds of things you can do with this.
I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of pen raising because there's a lot of new stuff going on in college football. So Ralph will likely have a lot of points there, guys. And we were just going to break it down show-wise. Thank you for joining us, everybody out there. And if you're watching on replay, we appreciate it as well. Feel free to leave a comment below. Join us in the chat box. Guys, we look forward to doing this every Tuesday going forward, preparing for college football season here. And also remember, guys, check out sportsmemo.com. WagerTalk.com. It is Tuesday. That means $2 Tuesday. Top featured play from Hot Handicapper, both sites. Check them out. Only $2. So check that out. SportsMemo.com and WagerTalk.com. We were going to break down kind of the rules changes, what's going on this season, the scheduling changes, guys. Also, we got season wins out at sportsbooks out there, and also game of the year lines we were going to break down as well on today's show. We got about 7 or 8 games where you can go bet them right now. So really interesting, really fun stuff in the college football landscape. 38 days away from September 26th, which is when the SEC is planning on kicking off. Ralph, I know you broke it down even further exponentially than I have. Did you want to throw anything out there to the watchers in terms of rules changes, scheduling changes?
Well, obviously the schedule changes this. They're playing 10 conference games. So we had the traditional 8 conference game schedule. And then we're going to talk about who had the best and worst draw, adding 2 more games. The schedule, as you said, is going to start the 26th of September. They're going to play through December 5th. So that was the normal SEC championship day. That'll be game number 10 of the SEC schedule. They're going to leave December 12th open for any COVID makeup games. And then the SEC championship is scheduled for December 19th. Just a quick note from Greg Sankey, the SEC manager. He said they're going to use third parties to test. So every school and every football program is testing consistently. They're going to test at least twice a week. They're going to be testing 72 hours prior to game time. And any player that wants to opt out for the 2020 season does get to keep his scholarship.
Okay. And it's interesting because they're just going to add that on, meaning it doesn't count against the team's 85 scholarship limit, Ralph, or we're unsure on that. They're going to kind of
I don't know. I think they'd have to go to the NCAA, but I think there's going to be a lot of leeway, for players wanting an extra year for sitting out a COVID season. I think the NCAA will just come up with a blanket rule that if they did that, they're allowed. But that's just me speaking personally. I have not read that.
Okay, so we got 10-game season here scheduled, Robbie. I believe each team gets 1 bye week as well fixed in there. So some of the games, I think it's like week 6, week 7, right in there. There's going to be less games on those Saturdays because teams are getting bye weeks. And it's SEC versus SEC. No resting around with a FCS opponent or anything like that, Robbie. So did you want to throw out anything with rules changes, scheduling changes?
No, I think Ralph covered that pretty good. But as you just mentioned, Drew, boy, you talk about every week matters and every game matters. There's going to be large SEC games played every single week of the year as these teams try to make it to an SEC championship game. I began to, try to uncover what we do in the fall. You try to look to fall practice, see what's going on, but everything is so slow. I think Kentucky, for one, is just opening up today, and the procedures for practice will probably be a little slow to start. So we won't grab the amount of information right off the bat. It'll probably be a couple of weeks down the road, meaningful stuff. I think, I thought back to a point or an idea that Ralph had, or a thought, wasn't even an idea, just a thought that Ralph had way back in one of our earlier shows, where he said, I know college football coaches, and in the fall, they're going to fight for extra practice time that they missed. Well, now with the season pushed back to September 26th, I believe the number is 25 practices for these teams, which is an extreme amount and probably better this way, right? 25 leading right into the season rather than, 15, a 3-month interruption, and then 15 more. Everybody's on campus now. Your high school recruits are here. A lot of times, some get there in the spring. A bunch don't get there till the fall practice sessions. So it'll be interesting now to start to follow these practice fall camps and see if we can grab anything, because you know what, it's different. I happened to watch the first episode of Hard Knocks from an NFL perspective and how different it is for them practicing right now. Same goes for college football. The team that handles this the best will probably get an upper hand. And, without digging for information, it's really hard to tell which of these schools will handle it the best. You may get some underdogs that come through, handle it real well, and outperform expectations, Drew. So it'll be an interesting college football season, but certainly in the SEC, I look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be fun. You brought up Kentucky there. Kentucky's one of the line games here against Florida. We got Florida Gators minus 15.5. Also, week 1, I was seeing Kentucky versus Auburn. That's a big matchup there. But Ralph, before we break down the games, you also saw season win totals out there, I believe. Did you want to throw those out there?
Yeah, these were from Bovada. So, they just came out this morning. And again, we talked about how teams that played week 9 conference schedules that had a win total of 4 now are down. And I think there's some value on the bottom levels here. I'm looking to play some unders, but Alabama is 9, Georgia 8.5, LSU is 8. I do like the LSU under. Florida 7.5, Auburn 7, A&M 6, Kentucky 4.5. Tennessee 4, Ole Miss and South Carolina 3.5, and Missouri 3. They spared us from Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt will be a 13-point plus dog in every game. So, they don't want to put up a 1, needing a 13-point conference upset for Vanderbilt. So they just didn't even post a number. But Alabama 9, Georgia 8.5, LSU 8. The bottom is Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Missouri.
Interesting. I mean, to put up a half a win for Vandy, I don't know. I would think that they'd be interested in getting some action on that. No, Ralph?
I would be betting under. Yeah, now granted, perhaps my power ratings that have them as a 14-point dog, Rob talked about unique situations. You have a few players that opt out because of COVID and you miss a couple quarterbacks and you start missing an all-conference center, and these power ratings are really going to be fluid. That's why I have absolutely no interest in putting out my power rating numbers early, because they're actually going to hurt people, because there's going to be so many things changing day in, week in, and week out that, I'm going to hold them close to my vest, make a lot of changes. Rob, what we'll have to do is we'll have to get a little group and, perhaps Drew and Rob and, get Teddy involved and all those guys that do power ratings. Everyone take one division of one of the power conferences to keep track of players daily, that we can share information on the spreadsheet and be able to follow up, where we're not trying to follow all 3 Power 5 conferences that are playing, but just maybe one division of those Power 5s.
Yeah, that's a great idea. 2 minds is better than 1, and we can be prepared as a team here and attack this ever-changing college football season. And one of the things I always say as a sports bettor here, is change is good for the sports bettor because it makes it so much tougher on the odds makers. So if you're ahead of your game, you're organized, you're ready to get after it, and you're prepared, like you're saying, Ralph, I think it could actually be advantageous for the sports bettor. Not to mention, guys, a lot of people down on college football. I want to throw out a situation where it could actually be a net positive for college football. If the SEC, Big 12, the ACC go out here, have success in the fall, who knows? The Big 10, Pac-12, in the Mountain West, in all the teams that postpone their season, they might end up going in the spring, and we could actually get an extended college football season with the Ivy League as well. It used to be a line conference like we talked about, Ralph. There could be a whole lot of college football in the next 6-7 months or so. So it's not all doomsday, and it's really good to have line games out here, guys.
There's no question, Drew, that it is. And I just want to make another quick point here. While Vandy was left off the list for season win totals, so was Arkansas. And I looked just now, and Arkansas and Vandy actually don't meet. Otherwise, you could have put up a half on both of those teams and take your option, which team is going to get their one win. But, yeah, odds makers left Arkansas off as well. So we got the major group of the SEC, but certainly not those two bottom feeders. And I'm sure we'll get into those numbers a little bit more as we go on here.
All right, guys. We also got Chip Player in the house saying Auburn versus Florida in Atlanta for the championship. I don't know. Auburn has a tough route there, Chip, but War Eagle to you. David saying best show ever. Love watching. And Paco Healy in the house from San Diego. Appreciate you joining us, Paco. So, guys, we do have these games out. Huge shout out to PointsBet for putting these numbers out. Always like to give credit to the sports books that are kind of going out on a limb and leading the way here in the marketplace. But top of the card here, guys, we do have the game of the years out right now at PointsBet. We got Kentucky versus Florida. Looks to be on the top of the card here. This is 24 days away. And we got the Florida Gators minus 15.5. And I'll tell you guys, throw it to you first, Robbie. Florida is a team I have as being improved here. We had Thrash take over the quarterback position. Their offense looked good. They had a good defense there. I would look for Florida to be a pretty, good team here, making it to Atlanta, quite possibly, out of the East in the SEC. But laying 15.5 here, Robbie, to a Kentucky team that's really coming on. Well coached. They've recruited well. I mean, how many teams in the SEC can win 8 games with a wide receiver playing quarterback? I don't know if you could really rattle off that many teams in Division I football here, FBS level, and Kentucky was able to do that. Now they're catching 15.5 in the first line game here by PointsBet.com. Any opinion here on Kentucky versus Florida?
Last year, Kentucky played them extremely tough, Drew, and Florida didn't win that game until the very end. That's a 29-21 game. I'm going to rely on my memory here without having it right in front of me, but I believe that Florida broke off a long touchdown run or a long touchdown play with maybe under a minute left from their own side of the field to end up winning that game by 8. But Kentucky had been previous drive. They had a chance to actually win that game straight up. So Kentucky just plays tough. And listen, I talk a lot of times, most oftentimes, about line play, whether it be the offensive side or the defensive side. Kentucky's a team with 4 offensive linemen returning. Kentucky's a team, for those of you who have not gotten Ralph's spring guide earlier this season, I'd imagine, Ralph, they can still get it, but you can get a breakdown of returning talent and experience, where Kentucky ranks number 1 in the SEC East. They had to give head coach Mark Stoops a ton of credit for adjusting on the fly and going to the quarterback option offense that they went to, because that's what Lynn Bowden Jr. ran in high school. But now they get their real quarterback back, Terry Wilson. It's a team with a great ground game, a deep stable of running backs. The question would be at wide receiver here, but maybe Terry Wilson can develop some rapport with new receivers. He's the much better thrower than Lynn Bowden was. So the offense becomes more diverse. And I like Kentucky on the defensive side of the football. So while Florida has improved, you're absolutely right. Kyle Trask and what Dan Mullen did with that team becoming explosive offensively, which we hadn't seen in a good 3 years. We had seen no offense whatsoever out of Florida, let alone explosive offense. Now they have it. I just don't know, Drew, if 15.5 is a number that I would lay with Florida against the Kentucky team that keeps themselves in battles, played with this team last year, 8 points, and a team with a lot of offensive, 4/5 of their offensive line returning. I kind of like those types of squads. So we'll see. I think that Mark Stoops, if I'm right, is the only coach to progressively win more games every year during his tenure, I think, with Kentucky. Maybe that got snapped last year, but they had gone along that progression. Win games, win more games the next year, win more games the next year, win more games the next year. It's a team really that's a program now more than a team just trying to make their way into the SEC East.
What are you liking here, Ralph, with the Cats and Gators?
Well, I'm gonna refresh Rob's memory a little bit more because that game was eye-popping to me. Kentucky led that game 21-10 into the fourth quarter. Felipe Franks got hurt. Then they missed the 2-point conversion, and then they were trying a 35-yard field goal to seal the win with 50 seconds left, and then Florida broke a 73-yard run when he should have been kneeling, and that was the gap. So this by no means was an 8-point game. This was a game that Kentucky dominated, and that was that was a 26-21 first down edge for the Gators. I do when I'm handicapping games, Drew and Rob, I think it's very important to look at where last year's games lines were and then see how much each team progressed. I was shocked that Kentucky was only getting 8.5 against Florida last year. That was early in the year. Kentucky had not started to make their run, but it shows you they could play with Florida, and they did. Here's my problem with Eileen Kentucky talent-wise. I think Florida wins. I think Florida wins the division. Okay, Florida has the schedule to win the division with who they're not playing. But Kentucky is coming off Vanderbilt, then they have at Alabama, then at Florida. So that's probably the two toughest back-to-back games anyone has in the SEC, playing at Bama and at Florida the next week, playing back-to-back weeks. I tweeted out earlier, there's only 3 teams that don't play back-to-back weeks in the SEC. That's Ole Miss, Alabama, and one other team on my Twitter. And
on the road.
Back-to-back road games, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Back-to-back road, just if you look at every back-to-back road game with no rest in the SEC, that's a 41% ATS mark. So to have to play Alabama and Florida in back-to-back weeks is something that I look at. But then when I look at Florida, Florida has Arkansas, Vanderbilt, and then Kentucky. They are going to be completely healthy, completely fresh, ready to take on this rival, while Kentucky just got mauled on the road at Alabama. So, the interesting thing in this game to me is you may have teams later on. This is early in the year, but you actually have teams that from the SEC East that if they get down to Alabama, they may actually just throw in the towel if they have a big East game on deck to win the East and just get to the SEC championship. So only playing those 10 games, your schedule's built on that. We'll see what happens. But I think the number is right. I think the number is 3 points off talent-wise, but situationally with the schedule, I think the number's right on.
That's a great point, Ralph. I was thinking it was a little rich here, meaning Kentucky shouldn't be getting that much. And it's kind of in a dead zone. That's kind of another question I could ask you guys in terms of where they place this number. But that's a great point, Ralph, in terms of where this game lands scheduling-wise. It's kind of a light going off of my head. We really got to pay attention to that kind of stuff. The game before, 2 games before, what these teams are playing with a full conference schedule in the SEC. That's very important. One thing, guys, as we're going down here, we got about 6 more games. We're going to be breaking down Game of the Year. If you're just joining us, PointsBet released all the Game of the Year odds in the SEC. We'll look at most of these are right on a key number, 2.5, 3.5, 7.5. However, this one's a little bit of a dead number, 15.5. Just from a handicapping odds making perspective, Ralph, I can see why they're putting it around key numbers just because they're a little bit unsure, where it's at. They don't want to get kind of roasted here. This one at 15.5, can you think what was going through their heads, the odds makers, in terms of throwing this out in a dead zone?
I think they're just using straight power rankings plus a home field edge. I have Florida 92.3, Kentucky 80.2, so that's an 11.1 difference. Add in the home edge, and like I said, it was a few points higher than my power rating, but I didn't use them. I think at this point you're just basically using power rating numbers, and 15.5 it isn't that much of a dead number in college compared to the NFL because of the 2-point conversions and because of, what happens in college. So set it where the power ratings are, let your numbers go. And I'm thinking that's just what they did for these early games.
In Rob, do you agree with that? Because there are a lot of these, Auburn, Georgia, 7.5, Georgia, Bama, 7.5. I don't know if it's just straight power numbers. It could be like Ralph is saying, but do you agree with him?
I think that's probably what it is right now, Drew. I would also agree that 15.5, for what it's worth, is not as dead of a number as others would be. I mean, I'm a totals player, and the immediate thing you do is you go through a list of common final scores when you're playing totals. And if I was to do that with this line, 28-13 makes Kentucky a winner. 21-6 makes Kentucky a winner. 31-16, like Ralph says, 16, an oddball number, but in college football and maybe with field goals against that Florida defense makes Kentucky a winner. 35-20 makes Kentucky a winner. So there's some places where this game can land where that hook will obviously help Kentucky. They can get beat substantially and still cover on some fairly common scores in college football. One more quick point here, Drew, because I saw a couple of comments that were posted underneath, one of which said that Lynn Bowden Jr. was a much better quarterback in this system than Terry Wilson is. But what we have to remember is that Eddie Gran and Darren Hinshaw, the coordinators here, didn't want to run that system. That was not Kentucky's system. These guys are spread offensive guys to which Terry Wilson is much better built. So they get back to running their regular offense. And as we talk all the time on this show, at least what we did for months about coaching continuity, certainly coaching continuity reigns here with Kentucky as Mark Stoops continues to keep his guys together.
Yeah,
Drew, I'll just let you know, 10 games last year at a line of 15.5 in college football. 3 of them won. Wyoming beat Missouri, UNLV beat Vanderbilt, and Nevada beat San Diego State.
That's some good information there. That Wyoming, Missouri, that was week 1 last year, I believe. All right, guys, we got Auburn 7.5 versus Ole Miss. This one in Oxford, 32 days away, I believe. Something of that nature. Either way, we got War Eagle versus Ole Miss here, laying 7 in the hook on the road. Ralph, any opinion in this one?
Yeah, I do like Auburn here, and I think it's one of those earlier games where a new coach. This is where I think I'm going to be playing against some new coaches early in the year. So, obviously, both the Mississippi teams have old schools. You look at the schedule, and Auburn is at South Carolina the week before, so a bit of a test, but not a game that you're going to get beat up with. Ole Miss is at Arkansas, so they do have a favorable schedule. So, my power rating numbers have Auburn as a 10.9 favorite. And, we're not sure what the fan situation will be, but clearly there's room for me to like Auburn in that role. You're looking at a team that 9 returning starters, the fewest in the SEC, but with Gus Malzahn being there that long, with the number 7 recruiting class, I think the recruiting numbers are so important this year because these kids that used to have 15 practices and maybe only saw the field in 5 practices now can be legitimate freshmen coming in. So, again, I'm going to mention recruiting classes as well. Auburn had the number 7 recruiting class. Ole Miss, remember, only number 34 this year, so their talent pool is a lot better with, again, 25 practices for the kids to be ready.
Yeah, Robbie. I mean, this is a rivalry game here. We got Lane Kiffin coming to Oxford for the first time. This game's happening on October 24th here against Gus Malzahn. I believe the second most tenured coach in the SEC here is, you don't win real quick. You get shown the door pretty fast, as we know. But what are you thinking here with Ole Miss catching 7.5 in Oxford against the Tigers?
Yeah, first glance to me, guys, it looked a little short. I would lean toward the favorite. It's spaced out. It's in the middle of the season, so that Ole Miss, which is going through 2 system changes, although unlike their in-state rival, Mississippi State, I think that, when we discussed these teams earlier this year, my opinion is that Mississippi has the much easier time adjusting to what Lane Kiffin wants to do offensively and defensively. I think the talent he inherits fits his mold on both sides of the ball a lot better. And remember, Mike McIntyre had improved Mississippi's defense already last year, so they were already making a step up. And there's not going to be too much of a significant change on that side of the football. John Reese Plumlee can cause you fits as a dual threat. And, of course, Matt Corral, the other quarterback here. Mid-season, Mississippi could be in pretty good form offensively, which would be scary because maybe they could score with Auburn. The negative towards Auburn, Drew, I think, and Ralph points out the talent that they bring in, but that defensive line that we talked about for the last 2 years as being one of the 3 best in the nation, maybe Clemson. It always came down Clemson, Auburn, Clemson, Auburn, Clemson, Auburn. And now you graduate a couple of big pieces from that line, and there's only one offensive lineman returning for this team. So, again, for Auburn to have it in week 5 gives that offensive line time to develop, gives the defensive line time to become cohesive. I don't know what this line would be come week 5. I'm trying to project ahead and think, but we don't know injuries, coronavirus, all that other stuff. I would stick with my original thought that 7.5 seems a bit too small here. But I think Mississippi really could be an offensive handful by the time midseason comes because Lane Kiffin's got a lot of creativity in that Art Briles style offense that he likes to run. And he's got the ground game set. He's got the quarterback set. He's got receivers. They could be a dangerous team once they get some games under their belt.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. And you're right, Robbie. I mean, that defensive line, they're 2 defensive tackles picked in the top 43 picks of the NFL draft this past year. So they got some kind of rebuilding to do, but it might be reloading. Auburn has had a good defensive line for as long as I can remember, really. Guys, next. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Ralph.
Let me just say this, Rob. Ole Miss is going to learn how to have an offense real early, facing Florida the first week, Kentucky the second week, and Alabama the third week. Then they get 1 week off with Arkansas. Then they play Auburn. So we're going to know. The problem is, yes, their offense I don't think their offense is going to be that good because of the defenses they have to play for the first 5 weeks. I think down the stretch, after they play those toughest defenses, we may think, oh my God, this offense is horrible. But then all of a sudden they get Vanderbilt, A&M, Mississippi State, and I think they can explode offensively after that stretch.
And real quick, guys, because I didn't mention this end of it, I talked about how Mike McIntyre improved the Ole Miss defense last year pretty dramatically, as a matter of fact, when you go through some of the defensive categories and the statistical differences from the year before. But to that point, how much better is Bo Nix going to be, Auburn? Drew, because if Auburn gets the Bo Nix that, they recruited out of high school with a year under, he was thrown into some bonfires last year where he didn't perform well, but I don't know what you expect out of a freshman. You've got Chad Morris over there now taking over as the OC. And we talked a little bit about how it's so difficult for Gus Malzahn. He wrestled with, I'm calling plays. No, I'm going to pass it off. Okay, I'm taking back play calling. No, I'm going to pass it off. And Auburn's offense was kind of like a yo-yo, right? Back and forth. Some games good, some games lousy. Now it's all Chad Morris's. Gus Malzahn's out of the way. Hey, if Bo Nix takes off offensively, then as Ralph is mentioning, he doesn't think Mississippi's offense will be as good as maybe it looks on paper simply because of the defenses that they're going to play. If that's the case, then boy, that Ole Miss defense needs to continue getting better to stay in this game with Auburn if, in fact, Bo Nix, with Chad Morris calling plays, becomes an offensive juggernaut once again.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a big part of Auburn, like with a lot of teams, the quarterback position. But you hit the nail on the head, Robbie. I mean, how Bo Nix performs this year is going to be key to Auburn's success. I mean, they had one of the best defenses, and in my opinion, one of the best defensive lines in the last decade in college football. And they really didn't do a lot with it last year because of the quarterback play, in my opinion. And if he's not able to step up, I mean, this is going to be Gus Malzahn, the offensive creator. He's got his buddy in the system now, another good offensive mind here in Chad Morris. They really got to perform well. I mean, that's what the Auburn fan base is kind of feeling here. And it's not that the seat's kind of always on fire when, 2.5 hours to the north is arguably the best college football coach of all time. It's a tough position, but he's getting paid well to do it. So he's got to kind of perform here, Robbie. But guys, next game up here, we got Georgia versus Bama. Looks like Bama -7.5. You're going to want to circle your calendar for October 17th. Some big matchups here. We're talking some heavy hitters with Georgia, Bama. We also got LSU, Florida on the slate. So a lot to be determined here on October 17th. But Ralph, we're seeing Bama -7 in the hook in Tuscaloosa against the Georgia Bulldogs, man. Two heavy hitters. What are you thinking here?
Well, my line is 8.5, and I did a Alabama guide for Touchdown Alabama, and my notes in that game were 5th meeting in the last 10 years, with 3 being neutral, including the 2017 national championship. Last time Crimson Tide hosted Bulldogs was 2007, a 26-23 loss. That was Matthew Stafford. But this is only going to be the second time in the last 5 seasons that Alabama has been a single-digit favorite. The only other time was LSU last year. So, if you're thinking, okay, I get Nick Saban at home and I'm only laying single digits, I'll tell you what, that's probably the way I have to go, because, you're looking at Saban only laying that. Bama has at Ole Miss before, and Georgia actually has a very difficult game. Georgia's coming off Auburn and Tennessee, those 2 games prior. So, again, schedule-wise, the way Alabama sets up, do you remember you lost to them in the national championship? Probably. Will that come up? I'm sure it will. So I will take Nick Saban at home with Alabama laying single digits.
Yeah, and the favorable schedule there towards Alabama with this SEC scheduling is very surprising, Robbie. But what are you thinking here with the Bulldogs? And
surprising, Drew?
Surprising. How does that work out? But we got Georgia, Bama, Robbie. What are you thinking?
Coming straight from an Auburn alum, right? Hey, this is tough for me for a couple of reasons. Georgia's defense is going to be savage. Alabama's offense is going to be every bit as good, I would think. However, Mac Jones is not Tua, although Mac Jones played very, very well, and I think he's going to play well this year because he's got the pieces around him. We talked about the Alabama receivers that went to the NFL. However, when Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle are your 2 new wide receivers, you're probably going to see as much as you saw out of, Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs III last year. They're going to be explosive, but the Georgia defense is, in my estimation, going to be somewhat of a brick wall. So it'll be interesting to see how well Alabama performs offensively against this defense. The problem with this game for me comes on the offensive side of the football, right? Kirby Smart, obviously he was under the tutelage of Nick Saban for a lot of years, comes to Georgia to build Georgia into the Alabama way, and he's, been very successful doing it. But the offense has been the one thing that they've wanted to get into the modern age rather than just being a run-dominated offense. So they get Jamie Newman in, and I'm interested to see how this quarterback battle works out, guys. JT Daniels, Jamie Newman, at first I thought it was all Jamie Newman's job. Then all of a sudden JT Daniels is there, and now it's potentially either of their jobs. But the offensive coordinator here is Todd Monken. That's the point. You got an air raid style offensive coordinator in here because Kirby Smart wants to be explosive, wants to have the defense fear them downfield. I saw Jim Harbaugh stagnate his new offensive coordinator, Josh Gaddis, for a while. I saw Les Miles stagnate his offensive coordinator for a while. I wonder if Kirby Smart, whose shoelaces are tied as tight as Jim Harbaugh's and Les Miles, if he's going to stagnate his offensive coordinator if things don't go right off the bat and say, listen, we're just going to run 60% of the time, forget your air raid offense right now. We'll see how it works for Georgia. Guys, they have a wide receiving group that's ultra talented. They have 2 quarterbacks that are ultra talented. They've got a running game that's always talented. I think they have all the pieces to line up with Alabama and, not only cover 7.5, but on any Saturday could beat Alabama, even though I think Alabama is the best team in the conference. So I'm going to, the first couple of weeks will be key for me as Georgia goes through, and let's see what their play calling tendencies are. Let's see if they open up this offense a little bit, because if they're going to come to Alabama and just hand off, they're probably not going to win. They probably won't cover. But if they use the weapons that they have, which I think they will, I think Georgia plus points, even on the road, could be very live here.
Good stuff, Robbie. And Ralph, anything in closing here on Georgia versus Bama?
No, again, Georgia is going to have a tough time. They start off on the road, and granted, you have a road game against Arkansas, and then Auburn and Tennessee at home. So, your quarterbacks are going to get that experience at home, but to me, it's just that tough road game at Alabama, even if there's only a handful of fans there. The different settings, the different sight lines for that quarterback is difficult.
I'm almost thinking, just kind of projecting the line. If you made me bet this one, I might take the 7 in the hook with Georgia. You bring up the quarterback situation, Robbie. I mean, this is kind of a tricky handicap and something that you've talked about before, Ralph. I believe Georgia 4-year recruiting rankings is number 1 in the country.
They were number 1 last year. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a very talented squad, what they've been able to do. It's also a great place to recruit. Don't want to take anything away from Athens, Georgia. But when you look at their schedule, Georgia's Arkansas, Auburn, Tennessee. I mean, we're going to talk about Auburn, Georgia next. More than a touchdown favorite likely in all of those games. Where Bama, has Missouri, and then that Texas A&M game. A lot of people are, Texas A&M is pretty sleeper this year. And then Ole Miss. I just think if they have a tough draw there against Texas A&M, that's really their only kind of competitive opponent before this. So it might the line might be a little bit more favorable towards to jump on that Georgia number right now. That's just my thoughts anyway, guys. We do have the Deep South's oldest rivalry up next, Auburn at Georgia, in between the hedges in Athens, Georgia. -7 in the hook again here, guys, kind of staying around this key number, throwing the hook on the touchdown number of 7. But Robbie, what are you thinking here with War Eagle and the Bulldogs?
Well, it's early in the season. I think it's in fact, I'm looking right here. It's the second game of the season where these two teams will play. Now, I just talked about Todd Monken and what could be a renaissance in Georgia offense. Will a renaissance take place 2 weeks into the season? Not likely. But I don't know, Drew, that I want any part of Bo Nix and one returning offensive lineman against that Georgia front 7. I really don't. They're going to, in all likelihood, offensive lines, no matter how much talent you bring in, we'll say it again, it's probably the hardest group to become cohesive. Everybody's got to know the other guy's assignments. People have to cover for people all the time. And if you're not in sync, it leads to a lot of trouble. And a defensive mind like Kirby Smart, I think, can cause a lot of trouble for Auburn. As great as the defensive line has been, Drew, and you're an Auburn guy, the struggles for them the last couple of years have actually been the offensive line. Auburn fans calling out the offensive line and their lack of consistent play for the better part of the last 2 years. In a week 2 matchup against a Georgia defense, I really don't want any part of them. I don't want them on the road. Bo Nix on the road last year, as I mentioned before, had some really rough games. And unless his offensive line, and again, right, it's all guesswork. If Auburn's offensive line after 25 practices comes out in their world beater, you change this opinion completely. If Georgia, after 25 practices, gravitates immediately to Jamie Newman or JT Daniels and this new air raid system, then Georgia probably scores, 30 plus in this game. So I'm going to say right now, Georgia, because I don't like the matchup for Auburn. I don't like their matchup offense against Georgia's defense whatsoever. And I think that matchup itself could probably produce some points for the Georgia Bulldogs. So, here we sit on August 18th with no practices, nothing going on yet, and I'll make that call. Georgia minus the points.
All right, Robbie and Drew, 39.5 is the Ralph Betts total. Who are you taking?
Oh, over under.
Yeah.
I'd play it over.
I'd play it over as well.
41's too common of a number. I'd play it over.
All right.
Pace-wise.
As Robbie was talking, I looked something up on the database. So I wasn't not paying attention to you, Rob. And I'm going to go back to what Rob said. I'm getting an Auburn team getting over a touchdown against a Georgia team playing in their home opener and only their second game of the year against a real defense with a new OC and not knowing who the quarterback is. So, I looked up. There's not many. Obviously, we're talking low numbers. But going back to 2012 in the SEC, when a team is getting 7 or more with a total of 41 or less, they're 83% against the spread. I mean, it makes handicapping sense. You have a quality team getting over a touchdown, a low total of 41 or under. That dog often covers in a low-scoring game. So my mentality going into this game is just that I would, right at this time, I would back Auburn plus the points. And, Bo Nix, let me pull up his numbers. Bo Nix had a 2-2 ratio against Oregon. This was a true freshman playing against an AP top 5 team in Jerryville. And he had a 1-3 ratio at Florida. So he was 3 and 5 those games. He had a 13-1 ratio with the rest of the season. And he wasn't really called on. So to be a true freshman playing in the SEC, having a 13-1 ratio against non-top 5 AP teams, I am not that displeased with Bo Nix.
Okay, good stuff there, Ralph. I mean, nice stats there, guys. And we got LSU, Florida up next here, guys. But we got to talk about the defending champions. But first, want to remind everybody, it is $2 Tuesday at both Sports Memo and WagerTalk. Looking at it here, we got Teddy covers 5% big ticket MLB slugfest. Normally $40, just $2. Check it out, sportsmemo.com. Also, guys, obviously the knowledge on this panel, Rob and Ralph leading the way here. Check out both of their packages, discounts on the full season and any, full season win totals bets you get there with the full season package. So check them out there, wagertalk.com. We got LSU, Florida up next. Interesting number here, guys, and I like this one a lot. I got this one circled. We got the Florida Gators -2 in the hook. I don't think that number lasts, but interested to talk to you guys about it before laying down on this number, because Ralph's talked me off of and Robbie in terms of bringing up new ideas. That's what I love about this show, and things you might have missed as a handicapper, kind of working as a team to get the best results here. Robbie, we got LSU catching 2.5 in the swamp, 53 days away, man. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way I play Florida or nothing. And I think, of the games we've talked about so far, I think I would like this one the most. Florida at home, less than a field goal. SEC teams of this level, of the level that LSU is on, they don't regroup, they reload. We get all that. But the amount of talent that they lost is unprecedented in my mind in college football. I mean, I've been doing this for nearly 30 years now, and I don't remember a team losing as much, some close, but as much as LSU lost off of both sides of the ball. It's not like one side got decimated and the other is intact. They took hits on both sides of the football. Now they've got 5-star recruits to step in, but this is the 4th week of the season. They're going to be untested coming in. You get Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, and Missouri. 3, in the SEC, I guess you consider those 3 cakewalks heading in as far as SEC competition is concerned. And then you're going to go play Florida, which we talked about earlier, is now an extremely explosive offense with Kyle Trask at the helm. Dan Mullen has done a great job leading the way here with this offense in particular. And the defense is going to be in my estimation, one of your 3 best in the SEC. So LSU will, in my mind, Miles Brennan and company will have a little bit of trouble moving the football. Unlike Alabama, where the receivers were immediately replaceable, LSU now sits with one key target, and let's face it, he's a top 10 NFL draft pick. But aside from that, a new quarterback with one key target, week 4, after not being tested by a defense heading in, I don't know that I want that team on the road. For me, this is Florida. And I think you're right, Drew. I can't see how 2.5 lasts. I could see this actually crossing 3 and going to 3.5 because the sentiment, the anti-LSU sentiment as we get closer to college football and more people read their preseason annuals and more people hear more shows, they're going to be even more anti-LSU and the talent gap. Unless something drastic injury-wise happens to Florida at this point, I would play Florida minus 2.5.
And Ralph, just to piggyback off of what Robbie was going towards, LSU tied the record for most picks in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft with 10, tying Ohio State from 2004. Also the most draft picks in the total draft of 14 ever. So, I mean, in terms of reloading, maybe we're going to find out here. But obviously, it's a record-breaking thing, a record-tying thing of the amount of talent lost here for the LSU Tigers, Ralph. I will say this, scheduling-wise, coming into this game, I do think it favors the Florida the LSU side, with Florida playing Texas A&M the week before, where LSU plays Missouri the week before. But I don't want to steal your thunder here, Ralph. What are you thinking in this game?
Oh, you could steal all the thunder you want. It's my top play. There's no question. I make the line 6.5. LSU set the record. I do a draft guide, which is a weighted system, 7.5 point, 65 points lost. That's incredible. That beats that Ohio State 2014. 5 players in the first round, 2 in the second, 3 in the third, 2 in the fourth. And it sets up perfectly, Drew. This is one where you say that 2.5s might not be around. On the flip side, they may be around. LSU starts against Mississippi State. Brand new air raid offense in the SEC. Not going to do well week 1. Then they go to Vanderbilt. They're going to win by 20. Then they host Missouri. They're going to win by 10. Perfect scenario for a 3-0 LSU team. 24 straight wins for LSU. They're a dominant team. I am all over Florida. Top play, no question. Scheduling system is more difficult for Florida, but it's perfect to set up a play against LSU as they'll come in a perfect 3-0.
So line projection, though, Ralph, because it sounds like we're all on the same page sidewise with the Gators. Line projection, do you agree with Robbie? This goes through 3, or the scheduling keeps it here low?
Well, if Florida struggles against A&M and LSU is 3-0 with 3 20-point wins and they're defending champ, right, there's going to be a lot of public on that. I would bet it now. If you could bet the 2.5 right now, I don't care what you think the line is going to be. I absolutely would bet it. My line that I make it again is 6.5. So they have a 4 point of value. I will be calling someone that I know that may have an account here, and I will be betting this game. So you're not going to get 2.5 if it's not there. If you beat me to it right now, you might get it. But other than that, you're not going to get
it. Again, guys, we're quoting these lines from PointsBet.
Ralph's taking out the 2.5.
Hold on. Let me get
My screen just went red.
Got to make the call.
Yeah, Drew, that's the counterpoint to me saying this will go through 3.5. The counterpoint is because I'm with you. I think earlier you said that Texas A&M could be, I think you called them sleeper. I don't know if A&M qualifies as sleeper, but in the SEC they probably do, right? I think they're going to be really good. And if College Station proves to be hazardous for the Florida Gators the week before, and LSU is marching to a 3-0 record, then perhaps, the number sticks around. But again, if Florida loses the week before, you're also going to have the betting mindset. Florida off a loss at home is going to come out with a vengeance, and they'll bet Florida. So it could stick around, but as Ralph is saying, he's going to get to that 2.5 anyway. So don't count on getting 2.5 anywhere anymore. We'll see where it lands after Ralph gets through unloading on it.
Guys, the amount of betting knowledge on this panel, at Rob Veno Sports, great follow on Twitter, and at Cal Sports LV, Ralph Michaels there. Give him a follow, guys, because you learn a lot here, and information is key in sports betting. Also, $2 Tuesday, sportsmemo.com, wagertalk.com, got Teddy Covers, MLB top play 5%er, discounted to just $2, sportsmemo.com. We got 2 games left, guys, and 7 minutes to go, so we kind of got to book it here. Georgia, Florida, we're seeing the Bulldogs -3 in the hook. Interesting note here, it is projected to be in Jacksonville. Robbie, not sure, what are you thinking here? I guess I'm going to refer to it as the largest outdoor cocktail party because it's one of my favorite names in the sport.
Yeah, I love it too, Drew, because it goes back. It goes back to traditional college football. You got to love that. Lindsey Scott in the Georgia-Florida game in 1981 or 1980, whichever it was. But, hey, I don't know what it'll be now because this game is late in the season, November 7th, or at least in the back half of the season. But I would anticipate myself, the way I bet games, I would anticipate myself playing this game over the total. You're going to have 2 really good defenses, be the focal point that will probably keep the total down, in my estimation. You know, if things go according to how they are on paper right now, I would say maybe this game sits around 45.5 to 46.5, somewhere in there. By this time of the year, if everybody's healthy and everything's good, which is all we can judge it on right now, I think both of these offenses will be explosive by that time, and they will hit each other with some bombs here. You got really good quarterback play on both sides. You've got extreme wide receiver cores on both sides, great running games on both sides. And I think the defenses will be overwhelmed by the offense in this game. So for me, as a really, really way ahead, look ahead, I would anticipate myself playing the total. As far as the side goes, on a neutral field, I think the number's probably really good. I guess today I would lean towards the dog just because you're getting more than a field goal in what looks like a field goal game. But I think I'm going to be on over if, in fact, I get a number that's mid to, just slightly above mid-40s.
Ralph, what are you thinking here in the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, even though it might not be that this year?
I'll be quick. The interesting thing is if they change it this year, that probably means they have to change it next year because if they give Georgia or Florida a home game, they probably have to go next year and give the opposite team that home game to make it fair and not be neutral. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to make it quick. I have these teams basically even. If I'm getting over 3, I'm going to take that team, which has me on Florida. And I had a look on the database, Rob. You went back to last game and you said if Florida is off that loss, it's a different mentality that people want to bet it. Well, my database tells me this since 2013. If you're an SEC team and you were an AP top 10 team and you lost, you're only 19-20 the next week, 48.7% against the spread.
Good stats there at Cal Sports LV, throwing out a lot of those on Twitter, wagertalk.com for his full season package. Guys, last game here, interesting to note, both Georgia and Florida are off of a bye week. And last game on the card here, Bama versus LSU. Both of these 2 teams will be off of a bye week. We're seeing Alabama -2 in Baton Rouge. Ralph, any closing thoughts here on the last game on the card?
Bama, 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 Bama.
I'm with you.
I will say this. When Saban I'm looking at that guide I did again. Since Saban arrived at Alabama, he is 24-8 straight up, 18-13-1 ATS with revenge. When he's playing with SEC home loss revenge, he is 6-0 straight up, 4-2 against the spread. We're only laying a few points in this LSU game. I think them coming off that home loss last year, they get this done. This is my second favorite play on the board.
Alabama -2 right now at PointsBet, guys. Robbie, you agree with Ralph and myself liking Bama here? Might have a little technical difficulty here with Rob Veno's audio right now, but yeah, Nick.
So Rob, thumbs up if you like Bama.
I do. I like what Ralph said about revenge, and to be real,
We got a lag on Robbie, so Ralph, for just the enjoyment of the watchers here, Nick Saban off of a loss is what really, or off of a bye week is what really intrigues me here. Not to take anything away from Coach O, but -2. I don't know if this is going to be -2 by that point. So projecting the line, do you think this crosses 3?
Oh, easily. No question, because I think LSU will have been exposed by that point. The difference in the Florida game, LSU will not have been exposed. I think they will be exposed at this point.
And any thoughts here real quickly on LSU actually kind of proving us wrong and reloading, and who knows, the Johnny Manziels of the world coming out at the quarterback position, kind of surprising. I mean, they do recruit well there. What do you think the odds of that happening are?
Well, yeah, they're recruiting in the same area they have. The difference is this: you need to have a coach and you need to have a system set up where your players are accustomed to stepping up and being the next players up. It's only worked for Alabama, Ohio State, and really Clemson. Other teams have had great recruiting classes, but haven't been able to train the younger kids to be able to step up. I don't think LSU does that in just one season, especially losing the talent that they did.
Yeah, and the coordinator position as well. So, Ralph, man, this is awesome. We got college football line games out. Do you want to throw out any closing thoughts here before we shut this down?
The teams that added, Missouri got screwed the most. They added Alabama and LSU. Arkansas added Georgia and Florida. A&M added Florida and Tennessee. And I know, you got to talk your love. Alabama got to add Kentucky and Missouri. Probably one of the easier schedules of the two teams they had to add, because they avoided Florida and South Carolina were the other two options they could have had.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works out that way, but hey, no complaining, man. We got college football on the slate, line games. I'm ready to get after it, and it's going to be a fun season, guys. WagerTalk.com, SportsMemo.com, at CalSportsLV on Twitter. Ralph is a great follow. I love seeing his stats. He gives out one every day, and it's always, information is key in sports betting. It's going to be a different year this year, guys, but the information you can gather, it's change for us, but it's also change for the odds makers as well, so we can get an advantage here. And Ralph,
one quick note, Drew.
Yeah.
I'm on a great run. I'm on a 17-6 run, but do not buy my play tonight at WagerTalk for $25. If you buy Steve Merrill's $2 play, you get a coupon on my play. So you're getting 2 plays for less money than just buying my package.
You heard it there. Ralph Michaels, WagerTalk.com, $2 play. Then you get a discount on Ralph's. Also $2 Tuesday at SportsMemo.com. And that's Teddy Covers with his 5% best bet there. Slugfest in MLB. So, guys, thank you for joining us. College football not too far away. We got line games, and it's going to be a lot of fun this year. So come back and join us, guys. Best of luck with your bets. Ralph, man, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, buddy.
Thanks, guys.